We're still celebrating 26 years of Nigeria's return to democracy, and now we turn our attention towards the very foundations of governance, that is, leadership, accountability, and credibility. In a journey marked by both progress and setbacks, we ask our leaders living up to their promises, particularly when there are disgruntled voices over the state of governance in the country, with various groups calling for protests, even on a day like this. Has the economy been in the best of shapes and, that would have doused any thoughts of Nigerians going to the street on a day like this? How can we, as citizens, demand a new era of transparent and credible leadership? Joining us for this segment are human rights activist Aisha Yesufu and Chief Executive Officer of Graemme Blaque, Zeal, Akaraiwe. Thank you very much for joining us. Aisha joins us virtually and Zeal joins us here in the studio. Thank you for joining us this morning, lady and gentleman.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. So I think before we get into the conversation, just to get an overall sense from, Aisha, let's get from your sense in terms of where we are. We see a lot about public frustration, mass demonstrations. There have been calls for protests today. What are your thoughts about how we fared as a nation 26 years in terms of demanding and asking for what is rightfully ours from our leaders?
So I think the word is one. We failed. You understand? 26 years ago, on March 30th, I had my first child, a son. He was born into Nigeria, and so he's 26 today, and that's how old Nigeria's democracy is. Slightly a month plus older than Nigeria's democracy. And today, as his parent, I have failed to keep for him the Nigeria that I enjoyed 26 years ago. The Nigeria where I could walk, around safely in the country, where there was hope, where you're not thinking of leaving Nigeria and just finishing school and just jackpotting or something, one of those things. Yes, the Nigeria there wasn't the best of Nigeria, but there were so many things that were there. Life mattered more than it does today. And it's so sad that the democracy that a lot of people died for, the democracy that people put their lives on the line for, that democracy has been truncated. And so for me, as a parent, as a Nigerian, as an older generation Nigeria, I feel as an absolute failure. And I think we have to take responsibility and begin to make this right, because I would not want a situation whereby I'm leaving this for my children to continue to fight for this. They shouldn't be fighting for mundane things. They shouldn't be fighting for things that, even pre the independence, our grandparents were fighting for basic things like their lives matter in their own country. They should be treated as citizens and not slaves. So for me, today is actually a sad day. And someone else asking me, why was I wearing black? I'm like, I'm wearing black because, democracy is dead as it is, and we need to revive it. We need to bring it back to life. We need to not let the blood and the lives of people who fought so hard to get us to where we are today, for it to be wasted. Because I tell you, a lot of people are crying in heavens right now because of what democracy has been turned to in Nigeria.
All right. I mean, many would say that the institution that upholds democracy so strongly, particularly, let's talk about America. Let me come to Zeal very quickly. The United States, of course, has been the picture of what true leadership should look like. There's so many names that we can mention, from the Martin Luther Kings down even to the presidents. We talk about Abraham Lincoln. You can mention so many names. Let's narrow it down to Nigeria. Do you think that Nigeria has a leadership crisis in the past 26 years? Or have we been able to equally, replicate what we see in other democratic functions?
If they had asked me this question in SSC, I would have walked out. I think what we are misunderstanding about the democracy in the first place is what a democracy is. So there's this assumption, and it's a fair assumption, and it's an assumption we've all held, and it's an assumption we all still hold. And that assumption is what is fatally flawed. It's not the leadership, it's the fact that we think we have a democracy, but we don't. This is not a democracy. There's a slight difference between a democracy and an electocracy. You know, what a democracy is about the citizens, it's about accountability, it's about the institutions, it's about transparency, it's about focus of government. So I'll give an example. You mentioned America. Why do we mention America all the time? It's mainly not because their democracy is the best.
Perfect.
It's because of their transparency. Transparency, let's even, and accountability. You want to get data from America, you can, right? You want to know what's going on in the government spending what they spent on, you can. That transparency is a cardinal institution that carries a democracy. What we have is an electocracy. And the key difference between the two, and let me use an analogy. It's like you rent out your house for 4 years, right? And you never check on the tenant, you never go there, and you just hope that in 4 years, when he gives you back the keys, the house is in better condition. That's an electocracy. Democracy is you're running things together. It's like a partnership. It's the difference between being in a relationship and having a one-night stand. An electocracy is just about a ritual. Every 4 years, we go out and vote. And we have no participation in the decisions of government. We have no means to hold the government accountable for their responsibilities. We have no way of ensuring that the government is embedded in the focus of citizens, which is basically to ensure the evolution of the citizens in the direction of human dignity. We don't have any of that. And those are the things that make a difference between an electocracy and a democracy. What we have is a 4-year ritual of picking leaders. Look at Cameroon or look at Zimbabwe. They had elections every 4 years, but they had a dictatorship. Yeah. So having the ritual of going to vote is not the definition of a democracy.
All right, let's go back now. Let's bring in Aisha back into the conversation and talk about, I want to talk about protests this time, especially because there are those who have called for protests today. I did mention this earlier. Looking at our journey so far, going back in time from the Nadeco days, you know, the pushback for those who fought for demanding what is rightfully theirs. And, you know, now we see a number of young people out there trying to, but this administration seems to have been termed one that has been very critical of dissent. What's your analysis in terms of how the administration has fared when it comes to protests, giving, not restricting citizens' rights to protest and observing the rule of law?
I think for me, I would say, if there was democracy, you know, true democracy, and I love what your guests in the studio said. They said there's a difference between, you know, a one-night stand and, you know, a relationship. If we truly had democracy, this administration will not be here. Democracy is not just about just going in, voting, elections are rigged. And my stance on this administration, for one, it's no. As far as Aisha Yesufu, I'm concerned, this is an illegitimate administration that should never have been allowed to be sworn into office. And I refuse to even talk about whatever it is the administration is doing, because I refuse to legitimize an illegitimacy as far as I'm concerned. Having said that, is to say that in Nigeria, like has been rightly said, we don't have the democracy as we're supposed to have it, because we don't have rule of law, there is no justice, people are not allowed to own their voices, there is repression. We see all over the place where certain rules are applied to certain people and at the same time not, you know, to other people. Citizens are different based on the connection they have, the money they have, the powers, you know, that they have. And these are things that affect a nation. And these are things that lead to the things we see today, where there's breakdown in law and order, where we have a lot of non-state actors that have taken arms against, you know, the country. Because at the end of the day, there is no justice. Democracy is supposed to give a platform where people's voices are heard, where people are represented, where there is justice, and where people know whatever it is that is done for them, there's a place that we go to. But unfortunately, what we have right now, it's a lot of state capture. In state capture, we have institutional capture. Literally every arm of the government, you know, has been captured. We see the legislative has been captured, the judiciary, you know, has been captured. So it's a place where it's life is not short, nasty, and brutish, and it's everyone for himself. And at the end of the day, it's a destruction that is ongoing. And so Nigeria, it's almost like that ticking bomb that people think it's not going to explode, but they don't know that it has already exploded. And it's going off, little by little by little, and everyone, it's a victim waiting to happen. And one of the things for me that I think we need to think about in this democracy, and I like the reference to United States of America, is that, look, democracy is not something that everybody knows how to do it. It's about putting in leaders who have integrity, who are going to obey the rule of law, and who are going to obey convention. Not necessarily everything cannot be written down, in white and black for people to adhere to. So that means then that if we as a nation, we do well, because Nigerians have failed, we the followers have failed, the leaders have also failed. We have refused to do. Governance is of two sides. Let me just say quickly before I round up. Governance is of two sides. You have the demand side and supply side, like Dr. Obieze would always say. The followers are supposed to make demands. The people who are the leaders who are voted in or appointed are supposed to supply our governance. So we have all both failed. We haven't done the things that we are supposed to do. Because if you're talking about democracy just doesn't start at when we are 18 years old, you are adult, you're working. Democracy is supposed to start from when you are a child. And how many houses in Nigeria are democratic? So a lot of the first set of dictators that Nigerians got accustomed to are parents and adults around them, and teachers and religious rulers who refuse to allow them to have voices, to be able to make demands, to demand justice. The children who did are termed stubborn, and they were always punished. And so we have grown up into people who don't even know what democracy is. We're used to, and we are militarized for a very long time. So we're used to, whenever they tell us to do something, we do it. We need to go back and work on a whole lot in this country, but most importantly, understand that, every citizen, we are all equal. But I will end this by saying democracy without education is a disaster. And if we don't work on getting good quality education, primary and secondary, for the public good of Nigeria, we are not going to get the democracy that we want.
All right.
So pretty much you still have a long road or a long way to go. But Zeal, you did talk about transparency, also accountability, and then we narrowed that down as well in line with what the leadership looks like. 26 years, how do you think it's best for us to get accountability or transparency? I mean, we have the ICPC, we have the EFCC. Are they not in any way proving that accountability is indeed right for Nigerians in the way they operate?
Accountability in the context of a democracy or government, or of a people, a nation in general, is a culture. It's not something that you bring out a law and ask people to comply with. It's a culture. So ask yourself, within the culture of the average Nigerian, are we self-accountable? If you run your own company, do you give accounts to yourself? Accountability is a culture. If it's not in our culture, it's not in our culture. You can do your best to enforce it, but we all know that culture eats everything for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So our leaders, before our leaders became leaders, they were, first of all, like each and every one of us, like Aisha said, they were ordinary citizens. Within the realm, I mean, a friend of mine was chatting with me the other day, and she was petrified that in her WhatsApp group, the same issues she has with government, she has in her WhatsApp group. It's the same thing in our culture, and we keep missing that point. We have made a mistake a long time ago, and the analogy I would use is you intended to build a structure, and you did a foundation for 3 floors, right? And you built 3 floors, and you realized, I can go higher. And then you built 10 floors, and then you built 15 floors, and then you built 36 floors. Right? And then every breeze that blows, every rain that falls, the building shakes, it crumbles, the windows fall out, and you keep patching it up. And somebody comes and tells you and says, look, you will spend a lot of resources and energy patching this thing up. You're going to ban people from playing loud music. You're going to ban people from slamming the doors. But if you don't revisit the foundation that was structured for just 3 floors, you're going to have a problem. And you call all the experts in the world and tell them, do whatever you like to fix this building, but please don't touch the foundation. And that's what, so telling someone and saying, okay, this building of 36 floors, let's assess it. I'm not assessing it. The foundation is wrong. If you're not going to change the foundation or reinforce it, then whatever you do to it is not going to last. And that's what we've been seeing in the country. It's not.
So what is this foundation and what is needed to be done?
The basis of the constitution we run does not fit our aspiration to evolve in the direction of human dignity.
So should there be a constitutional reform or something?
I think, what is a constitution in the first place? The agreement of how the entire country should operate in a manner to structure the resources for equitable distribution in a manner as well that law and order prevails. You can't build a constitution that is contrary to the inherent culture of the people. So I'll give an example because you mentioned ICPC.
Yeah.
The ICPC Act says giving or receiving gifts is a criminal offense and you will go to prison. But in every culture of Nigeria, giving gifts is applauded. So which is it? You tell me as a Yoruba person or an Igbo person or a Hausa person, when I go and visit elders in my village, I will take,
king without
even your religion says don't go before a king empty-handed. But your law says if you come with something, you go to prison. So which is it? So we've built our nation on principles that are contrary to our culture. And then we have now imposed a style of governance, which is called a democracy, but exhibited as an electocracy. And then you want to appraise it in such a way that it functions for the people. Let's look at, for a very simple exercise, the reason the Nigerian police was instituted during the colonial era was to protect the colonials from the people, because the colonials were exploiting the people. That's the reason the police was created. Have we changed that? Because as of today, you have between 30 and 40% of your police assigned to VIPs. We still have our police protecting the elite, who we call the elite, from the ordinary citizens. If I'm in trouble, what is the speed of response of the police? If there's a rumor of a protest, what is the response of police? So you see that the structure we run is still very much protecting the elite or the VIPs, whatever I want to call them, against the people. And that is the opposite of what a democracy is. So you don't appraise this democracy on those principles, it doesn't work.
Wow. A tough one, indeed. Anyway, Olive, you want to take a question on Aisha?
Okay, I mean, I still wanted to ask Zeal about the economic policies, but before we get into economic policies, I think that when you're talking about the growth or the enforcement of democracy, the judiciary has a key role to play in that journey. So let's get your assessment of where we are, Nigeria's judiciary, and where the lapses that you've observed, and what sort of hope you have for Nigeria's judiciary, which is the last hope for the common man.
Well, the judiciary is supposed to be the last hope of the common man, but unfortunately in Nigeria, the judiciary is a plaything of corrupt politicians and anyone who has, power and access. And we have seen over time the way the judiciary has been turned into a merchandise that can be purchased at any time, anywhere. And that's the reason why you see someone will leave maybe, let's say, my village in Agbede, and we go all the way to a village in Jigawa, Benukudu, a town there, and go and purchase judgment. We've seen where even when judiciary judgments are put down, they are not obeyed. They are not obeyed by institutions, and the judiciary is unable to do anything. You've seen situations whereby frivolous cases, frivolous issues are being put before the judiciary. So judiciary has been captured, and you see politicians actually bragging, they don't hide it openly that you go to court, they own the court, and they say this thing publicly. You see situations whereby even the highest judicial officer, which is the Chief Justice of Nigeria, are sitting at a place. You're seeing a president of the appeal court sitting, and someone is coming to tell them how he didn't follow the rule of law to acquire a property, and then they are using that property that wasn't acquired, that was illegally taken back, to build things for them, to build houses for them. And the judiciary, they're silent. You're seeing where politicians and judicial officers are celebrating, which are things that are not, supposed to be. And unfortunately, even the Transparency International, I think it was a perception index, corruption perception index, this thing that they did, the Nigerian judiciary was top in terms of the one that the people perceived to be most corrupt. These are issues that really, it's sad, because you can't get a great nation without the judiciary, working. But there's hope for the judiciary. If the judiciary decides on its own to do the needful, because we have a lot of people who are incorruptible in the system. The ones who are doing the system wrong, they are quite few. But unfortunately, it's the vocal minority and the ones who are powerful. So the people who are doing the right thing, the judicial officers who are doing the right thing, are being punished. And when they are punished, we don't stand for them. And so they're on their own. And I'll give you an example. Even in the legislative, last year we had a situation where a senator, if I can mention him, I think it was Senator Ningi, who would come out to tell Nigerians that, look, the budget is being padded by such, huge sums of money. What ended up happening? He was suspended. He was punished. We as citizens, we didn't stand with him. And then this year, there is even more outrageous padding. So it's really heartbreaking when you see people who are standing and doing the right thing. They're the ones who are constantly being punished. But like I said, there must be a judicial reform. We must, from the way judges are being appointed, from the way technology must be used to take out a lot of corruption. You can't be picking cases, I don't know how it's called in the judicial term, where you're either going to Supreme Court or Appeal Court. There must be a system where you log in, you take in something, not someone deciding when they are going to push your case forward or push your case backward. There are also a lot of reforms that needs to be done in the judiciary. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. We have judges sitting down and still writing. Why don't we have stenographers? Why don't we have people? Why don't you have judges just sit and listen and make sure cases are done, quickly? Why are they taking so much time, and then cases are dragging on 40 years, some cases 50 years? Then justice is already lost. Even when the person is winning the case, nothing is coming out of it. But most importantly, I think the judiciary should wake up to its responsibility, because it's supposed to be the one that, like you said earlier, the last resort of the common man, that when everything, fails, so we should be able to go there and get some recourse. And where justice is not gotten, unfortunately, one of the things that happen is that, like I said earlier, people begin to take laws into their hands because they know they will not find justice there. And that's where we have, with the insecurity we have today, with a whole lot of things that are going wrong in Nigeria, because many people no longer believe they can get justice. And if you speak to the people who are attacking the state, you find they have a lot of injustice that have been done to them, and that these things have not been corrected.
Right. Thank you very much for, speaking to the challenges in Nigeria's judiciary. And I'm sure that this is something that we'll keep talking about, and hoping that we can see some of these reforms that have been suggested. The NBA conference is around the corner, and I'm sure that this will form some of the hallmarks of their conversation. But let's come back to Zeal now. And I want us to talk about the economy this time. April last year, we got the announcement that inflation had, dipped to 23.71%. They were like, oh, this is great, because the month before it was 24.23%. We hear about some of the seeming growth sometimes, and changes and improvements in the numbers. But the major concern and complaint that you hear from the majority of Nigerians is how some of these numbers are not reflecting in the lived reality of Nigerians. You go back quickly to policies like subsidy is gone, and then the unification of the exchange rate. And these policies, some would argue, the economics to argue, that maybe they were great, or maybe we should have phased it out. But the truth is, the average common Nigerian is still complaining of hunger. So where are we? How did we get here, Zeal? How did we get here, and how do we get out of where we are? Or maybe you think we're in a good place. I shouldn't assume that, we're getting out from where we are. Maybe you think we're in a great place.
Well, I think it was last year I tweeted something, and I said what I call the 10 by 10 by 10 coincidence, that in roughly 10 years, so if you pick, let's say 2012, in roughly 10 years, money supply has grown 10 times. In 2011, 2012, give or take a few years, money supply in the country was 10 trillion. Today, give or take a few billions here and there, it's 100 trillion. It's grown 10 times. Now, the price of a Toyota Corolla in 2012 was 5 million. Today, it's, guess what? 50 million, roughly 10 times. A bag of rice was 10,000. Now it is roughly 100,000, 10 times. The exchange rate was 160 to 1. Now it's 1,500 to 1, roughly 10 times. So in 10 years, everything has gone up 10 times. It is not a coincidence. It is what we did by ourselves to ourselves. So whether or not we get out of it, the question is, what are we doing to stop the bleeding? A lot has been done to stop the bleeding. But what Nigerians are complaining about regarding inflation, inflation is a measure in the, I don't use the word average, but that's the best word to use, average prices across various sectors, the change in those prices month on month or year on year. The issue we have, while inflation is a big issue, and that has been considerably controlled compared to where we were last year, but the main issue is that the price point today is too high for the average Nigerian to survive. That's the issue. The issue is not that, I mean, we were all here last year, if you go to one supermarket and check the price of anything, and you say, it's too expensive, I'll go to a different one tomorrow. You go to the different one tomorrow, the price is higher. You go back to the price has changed again. No, but the issue is that if you look over the last couple of months, say 6 months or so, prices have not been rising, at least from my perspective, as much as they were a year ago. But the point is, even if prices stay exactly where they are today, it's still too high. And that's the challenge the government is battling with regarding the poverty of the people. The prices are too high. Like I said, the 10 by 10 coincidence, almost everything went up 10 times over a 10-year period because we mismanaged the economy. The one thing that did not go up 10 times was the people's salaries and the people's wages. That did not go up. So until we can find a way to stabilize, like they say, if a car is going downhill, you need to first slow it down, stop it, before you can put it in reverse.
So, but they argue that right now what they've done is slowing down and stopping it. So we can then start to see an upward trajectory. Do you have confidence that maybe in another 2 years we'll start to see things move in an upward trajectory in Nigeria?
I think the fact that we have really slowed down the bleeding gives me hope that there's capacity to turn it around. Now, the policies to turn it around are different from the policies to stop the bleeding. So it will be interesting to see what policies we come up with to bring prices down. You know, that's the important thing. Stabilizing prices is very important. We have some relative success on that. But how do we turn it around to start bringing prices down so that the affordability of the common man is catered for? I think that's the real issue Nigerians are suffering. It's not that inflation is not really the common man's problem as much as the price point as we are today is already too high. So how does the government retweak its spending? How does the fiscal policy change things in such a way that the government can now afford to bring out policies, ensure the processes, the procedures of manufacturing bring down the cost of living for the Nigerians?
All right. I think I'd like to push my final question to you, Aisha. We cannot help but talk about one thing that you've also been interested in always talking about, which happens to be the aspect of governance, particularly facing the electoral body. In 26 years that we've had the independence, so far so good. When I say independence, away from military rule, what would you make of INEC? Well, I'm told that possibly the network has indeed... okay, all right, she's there.
I can hear you.
Oh, great, great. Let's talk about trust deficit in 26 years. What would you make of that? And going into 2027, where we'll see our independence continue to either thrive, grow, there's a body that is saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that, trust from the people to those whom they have elected in power is indeed kept at a standard. What do you make of INEC and going into 2027 while focusing on our own democracy?
As we are currently, the only thing independent about INEC is it's the letter I. That's the only independent that is there, and unfortunately, INEC has not giving the people a reason to trust them. Nigerians are very, kind people, and they're always ready to forgive. Nigerians are not too hard, and little things that you do, they appreciate it. But over and over again, their trust, they've been betrayed and they've been disillusioned because of the things that we see. As it is right now, even as we go into the election, there's nothing to trust, because you see a lot of people who are in INEC currently, whether the commissioners, that have been appointed and all of that, most of them are either card-carrying members of a particular party or supporters of, strong card-carrying members of a particular party, of a particular party. And even when Nigerians have cried out to say, this is wrong, because anyone that is partisan is not supposed to be in that kind of opposition, even if you're not a card-carrying member. The moment that you've been partisan in a way, you're not supposed to be in that position. But we've seen the way INEC has gone on. We've seen the way that INEC has conducted election, and the brazen manner that it refuses to follow, judicial orders. When INEC is told to do something by the courts, it does whatever it is that it wants to do. And I think there's a big flaw that we have in the Electoral Act, is where the burden of proof is not on INEC. The burden of proof should be on INEC in a way that they are the ones who are conducting the election. They're the ones who have collected huge sums of money, billions of money to conduct this election. And they need to come out and show Nigeria, when they are told that the election that they conducted is not well conducted, then the the law must state that they must prove to us that indeed the work that was given to them, they did it the way that it's supposed to be done. I've never seen in any case, I know people will say, oh, he who alleges must prove. No, that mustn't be the case when it comes to INEC, because they were given a job to do. You don't go to your employer, you've not done the right thing, and then your boss tells you to do something, you don't do it, and then you tell your boss to prove it that you didn't do it well. No, you are the one that have to prove that you've done it well. And one of the things also, just to quickly add, is that we must also get to a place, I'm just digress a little bit now and talk about the judiciary, that the situation where we have in Nigeria today, where millions will vote, and then some few people will sit down somewhere in the court, and they will upturn the votes of the people. That has to stop. We must have enacted in the law, in the Electoral Act, that the judiciary will not have the power to declare a winner. What they should have the power to do is for there to be a recount where there is a problem. Let them bring out all the ballot paper, let them recount it, or let them go for a fresh election. Situation whereby Nigerians have come out, they vote, they've sweated, they've worked hard, and they put in their mandate is truncated. It's a crime. And for me, anybody that rigs election, it should be treated as a terrorist. It's terrorism it's electoral terrorism against the people. It makes the people we fight hard to get, things to go out there to vote, put their lives on the line, and their votes are not counted at the end of the day. This is not the way things should be. And a lot of things that even INEC, the things that it says it's going to do, it does not even follow its own regulations, its own stipulation. And these are major problems for Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Aisha Yesufu, for joining us. Zeal, Akaraiwe, fantastic conversation we've had this morning. We all look forward to a better Nigeria that will benefit all of us. Thank you for your time, gentleman and lady.